What's up, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Ravi Wadden, and in today's video, I want to talk about whether you should lease or finance the new Tesla Model 3 long-range all-wheel drive. Now, this answer used to be very black and white. Leasing was the way to go because it was an exceptional lease deal in terms of value, but the leases on the new Tesla Model 3 long-range all-wheel drive have gotten a lot worse in recent days or weeks. I'm not sure when it happened, but the lease deals just aren't as good as they used to be on this car. But what we'll do in this video, in the first part of this video, is we'll head over to the Tesla website and we'll talk about the monthly payment. We'll talk about the due at signing amount. We'll talk about the taxes, the fees. We'll get into all of the nitty-gritty details on this lease deal, and we'll kind of analyze this lease deal in detail. In the second part of this video, we'll run my 1.25% rule of leasing on this Tesla Model 3 long-range all-wheel drive. And then in the third part of this video, we'll talk about whether you should lease or finance this particular car, or whether you should even buy this car at all, because in my opinion, there are some better lease deals out there. But that's what we'll do over the course of this video. If you can please hit the like button and please follow me, that would be greatly appreciated. And if you haven't already, please be sure to check out DriveMatch.com. It's a company that I co-founded where you can get pre-negotiated lease deals. So check out DriveMatch.com. But with that, let's go ahead and jump into the computer behind me and talk about this Tesla Model 3 long-range all-wheel drive lease deal. All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we are on the Tesla website, and as you can see here, you can lease a Tesla Model 3 long-range all-wheel drive for $499 a month. This lease requires $3,000 down. It's a 24-month lease that allows for 10,000 miles a year, as you can see right here. I went with the stealth gray paint. Other paint options are additional costs, like the white is $1,000, the blue is $1,000, and the red is $2,000, and so is the Quicksilver. It's an additional $2,000. So we're going to keep that stealth gray. We'll go with the included 18-inch Photon wheels and the included black interior, and we're not going to do the full self-driving, which is an additional $8,000 option, as you can see here. So what we'll do is we'll scroll back up and click on Edit Leasing. Now, Tesla has a dynamic calculator, which I love. It's it's one of the best in the business, and it's really, I wish more manufacturers would adopt this, but most manufacturers aren't direct to consumer like Tesla, so I'm not sure they could. But anyways, you'll see that we have the monthly payment here, $499 a month. You'll see that Tesla leases include the $7,500 Tesla incentive and purchase option, which ends September 30th. So this is the EV tax credit. It's going to end on September 30th. And as you can see, they are kind of advertising it to make sure that it's a high priority for customers. You'll see that the lease is, $3,000 down. It's a 24-month lease that allows for 10,000 miles a year. But now this monthly payment does not include sales tax, and this down payment does not include taxes and fees. So what you want to do is click on this box that says include estimated taxes and fees, and you'll get a much better picture of the actual cost of this vehicle. As you can see here, the due at signing amount goes from $3,000 to $6,339. And a lot of people, think that when they see a $3,000 down payment, regardless of the manufacturer, they think that's what they owe when they go to sign the lease, but that doesn't include taxes and fees. So oftentimes it's, a couple $1,000s more than the actual advertised down payment. If you did a 36-month lease, the payment goes from $564 up to $560, or actually down to $560. So I think a 36-month lease option is the better way to go, in my opinion here. The annual mileage allowance is 10,000 miles, and if you go for 12 or 15,000 miles, the payment goes from $560 to $588. Now let's go ahead and keep this at 10,000 miles. And if you drive over 10,000 miles a year, let's say you drive 15,000 miles or 16,000 miles, it's better to just get the 15,000 miles up front. Otherwise, you're going to pay the excess mileage penalty, which, as you can see here, is 25 cents per mile. So just get the mileage up front. It's going to be cheaper than paying the 25 cents excess mileage penalty. Now, you also see that the Teslas now have a buyout option, as you can see here. You have the option to purchase this Tesla as spec'd based on the residual with the mileage that I selected for $26,395. Now, if I increase the mileage, the residual is going to go down. So from $26,395, you can now buy this car for $24,440. So it automatically adjusts, which I really like that about Tesla and how they have this calculator, this dynamic pricing model set up. Now, in this part of the video, I want to take out the calculator and run my 1.25% rule of leasing on this Tesla Model 3 long-range all-wheel drive. Now, anytime you run this calculation and you get a number over 1.5%, that typically is a vehicle that I recommend you finance instead of lease. If you get under 1.5%, that's definitely a vehicle that you should lease. Under 1.25% is what I consider a great deal and definitely a vehicle that you should lease. And under 1% is an amazing lease deal in terms of value, and definitely it's a rare lease deal and a vehicle that you should definitely lease. And what this rule takes into account is like the total cost of ownership, right? So it's going to compare your total cost of ownership over 36 months. Typically, anything you have over 1.5%, the cost of ownership over 3 years or 2 years, when you compare leasing versus financing, is going to be relatively the same. Sometimes when you're at 1.9, 2%, leasing is going to be even more expensive over 36 months. The only time you kind of want to lease in that scenario is if the depreciation on that particular car is going to be extremely high. But anyways, let's run my 1.25% rule of leasing on this Tesla. So we'll take the due at signing amount of $6,335. We'll subtract the monthly payment of $560 from that amount since it's included in the due at signing amount. That gives us $57.75. We'll divide this by 36 since it's a 36-month lease. That gives us $160. And then we'll add the monthly payment of $560 back in. And this gives us an effective zero down monthly payment of $720. Now, what I did is I took all of the taxes and fees that were due up front and I just rolled it into the monthly payment. And you get an effective zero down monthly payment of $720 a month. So essentially, if you multiply this by 36, that's going to be the total cost of the lease over 36 months. Now, what we'll do is divide this by this vehicle's MSRP. Let me just get the MSRP on this car. It's $47,490. So I'll divide this effective monthly payment by the MSRP, $47,490. And when I do that and multiply this by 100, I get 1.51%. Now, ladies and gentlemen, as I mentioned earlier, anytime you run this calculation and you get a number over 1.5%, that typically is a vehicle that you should finance instead of lease. Under 1.5% is a good deal. Under 1.25% is a great deal. Under 1% is rare and an amazing deal. As you can see here, this Tesla is sitting at right around 1.5%. So I'd consider this a good lease deal in terms of value. But the interesting thing here is that 1.51%, this Tesla Model 3 lease deal isn't as good as it used to be. Number one, the first thing I want to suggest to you guys is to go with a 36-month lease instead of a 24-month lease. It's going to be cheaper and you're getting better bang for your buck. And these lease deals on Tesla Model 3 long-range all-wheel drives used to be sitting at like the 1.25, 1.35 range. Now they're at 1.51. I don't know if it's because of the $7,500 tax credit expiring and Tesla is kind of increasing the prices on their lease because they're assuming that demand is going to go up with this EV tax credit expiring at the end of September and just, in about 2 months. So I think they've either lowered the residual value or increased the money factor, essentially the interest rate on these leases, because they're not as attractive as they used to be. But when you compare it to financing, so, if we compare the numbers of leasing versus financing, you'll see that, with $63.35 down, the payment's $560 a month. And if we put the same amount down, let's say $63.35 at 3.59, at 60 months, let's do 72 months here. Let's go with the promotional rate of 60 months. Let's include the $7,500 tax credit. You'll see that the monthly payment with the same $63.35 down, the monthly payment when you lease it is still, so it's $736. Let's say about $170 lower when you lease it a month. So you're saving money there. But the other thing to consider is that when you finance this car, not everybody is going to qualify for the $7,500 EV tax credit. You have to meet these income thresholds right here. So you have to make less than $300,000 for a married couple, under $225,000 as a head of household, and under $150,000 for all of their filers. Otherwise, if you finance this vehicle, you're not going to get the $7,500 federal tax credit. Meanwhile, when you lease this vehicle, everybody qualifies for the $7,500 EV tax credit. Doesn't matter if you're Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates or making $1 million a year, you'll get the $7,500. So not only do you have a lower monthly payment, you're going to also, your out-of-pocket cost over 36 months is going to be way less when you lease instead of finance. And then on top of that, the beauty of leasing is you're not worried about the depreciation, right? So oftentimes people finance this car and then when they go to trade it in or sell it in 3 to 4 years, they're oftentimes upside down, 5, 6, 7, 8 $10,000 sometimes, right? They have negative equity and they have to roll that into their next car. With leasing, you're protected from that negative equity. And Tesla leases actually also include gap insurance, so you don't need to buy gap insurance. And then you're going to get diminished value protection with the lease as well. And if you really want to keep the lease long term, as I mentioned earlier, you do have the buyout options, right? So depending on the mileage you select, for example, as it's spec'd here, it's $26,395. So for whatever reason, if you want to keep this car long term, you can by buying it. But overall, I do think that this lease isn't as compelling as it used to be. And I think there are other cars out there like the Honda Prologue, the Chevy Blazers, the Cadillac Lyrics, the Equinox EVs. You have some Mercedes options from BMW, which in terms of value, you're sitting under 1% in some cases, or you're sitting at like the 1.2, 1.25% range. So better lease deals in terms of value. So I think, if you want a Tesla, I personally would still lease this car, this Model 3 long-range all-wheel drive, but I think there are some other compelling options out there that you should consider if you're planning on purchasing or leasing this car. But with that, I'm going to call it a video. Thank you all for watching. Financial knowledge is power. Please like and follow for more.